FTP, threshold, the biggest buzzwords in cycling. It's what everyone loves to talk about. It's what everyone likes to brag about. But what I kind of want to go over today is why I think it's the most useful and also the least useful metric for racing and training. I'm very fortunate to work with VQ Labs up in Indianapolis, and over the last couple of years have done a lot of performance testing there with VO2, lactate testing, DEXA scan, sweat testing. Everything they have to offer, I've had the pleasure of doing, and I highly recommend everyone go check out VQ Labs in Indianapolis and see what they can do for you. This past week, I went and did a lactate test to kind of see where my numbers are at versus my last test in February, and I'll go over those results with you guys, full transparency. You guys can see every data point I have, and then I'll kind of go over what I use for my training, what information I think isn't important from a racing standpoint, but why it's important from a training standpoint. We'll dive right into the testing results, right? So this report is what Vision Quest will provide you after lactate testing. It'll have all your information from the test, all your results. So yeah, we'll jump right into it. So these are all my performance benchmarks derived from the lactate testing. I'll go over each of them, and there's a couple that I will kind of focus on afterwards as what I think are the most important data points that you can use in your training, and then also why I think that, and then the ones that I think really do and don't matter. So we'll start off VO2 max, maximum aerobic power. This is kind of what everyone likes to talk about if you're in the endurance world. Definitely a big buzzword. Mine sits at 82.6 milliliters per minute per kilogram based on the test. VLA max, maximum glycolytic power, mine sitting at 0.55 millimoles per liter per second. VLA max is something we focus a lot on in training, so I'll give it its own dedicated section here when I'm done going through everything. For me, for gravel racing, it's something important, but really any type of racing you do, VLA max is going to differ for you of if you want it high or low, so I'll kind of go through that at the end. Next up, anaerobic threshold, your MLSS, also known as your threshold or FTP. Mine's sitting at an absolute value of 387 watts, and then a 5.45 watt per kilo, based on my weight, sitting at about 71 kilos. Next up, fat max. So it's the wattage with the highest max fat metabolism, so the wattage you're burning the most fat at. Mine's sitting at about 258 watts. Carb max is going to be where you are burning 90 grams of carbs. So for me, I burn 90 grams of carbs at 364 watts. And that's 90 grams of carbs per hour. Available glycogen, so just how much glycogen my body could store, sitting at about 527 grams. LT1, that's about 280 watts. The recovery index and acclimation index, truthfully values I don't really pay attention too closely to. All right, so there's all my results from the lactate test that we did at VQ Labs. Now I'll kind of go over what I think is the most useful for training and what values I think are a little bit overrated is maybe not the right word, but people care too much about them when they really shouldn't. So the two things we use the most in designing my training programs are VLA max and MLSS. I'll probably start with MLSS because it's the easiest, right? That's your threshold. That's kind of what, for the most part, your zones are being dictated on. Your recovery zone, endurance zone, tempo, threshold, obviously, and then VO2 max. That's just kind of the number that everything is built around, right? And the lactate testing is nice because it does give you specific zones, that differ a little bit from the traditional calculations, because these are exact. They are, exactly what your body does. So they're going to be a little bit different than just a generalized equation. So for me, I'm able to set all my zones based on the values that I got from the lactate testing. But at the end of the day, like the threshold is still kind of the gold standard, the value you use when building your training, building the percentages of intensity, right? It is in that way a gold standard. Like your threshold is important for training. The other metric we use is VLA max, which VLA max is your glycolytic capacity, your glycolytic power, whatever you want to call it. Basically, to summarize, it's your body's ability to use the glycolytic energy system. So to kind of oversimplify it and maybe not explain it fully correct, but just in general terms, what it means to have a high or low, what that looks like from a body type or rider type standpoint, and why you would want either or. So a high VLA max is going to be your sprinter types, your track riders, people that need to use the high power, short burst type of efforts the most. Because with a high VLA max, your body is able to use your glycolytic system easier and quicker. So you're able to get the energy to those legs, the fuel to those legs that it needs to be able to do, those sprints, those 30-second, 1-minute efforts, the high power efforts. That's what a high VLA max does. A low VLA max is it's the opposite, right? It's your body doesn't use the glycolytic system as quickly or as easier. It likes using fat more. Obviously, the body still prefers glycogen, but it's more okay with using fat for fuel. So for those long tempo efforts, maybe a little bit sweet spot threshold, like it likes a low VLA max because you're not just burning through your glycolytic stores, your glycogen stores. So for like a gravel race where you're going to be out there for 6, 7, 8 hours, you obviously don't want to be burning through your glycogen stores because you can only consume so much during the ride. You want to be conserving that the best you can. You want to be using fat as fuel, so you're going to be wanting a low VLA max. So from a training standpoint and a racing standpoint, why this is important is because every race is different and dynamic in how it's going to play out. So for races like an Unbound or Gravel Worlds that I'm out there for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, I want a lower VLA max because I want to be conserving as much glycogen as possible to be able to make it through that race. But in the same breath, for shorter races like maybe a Highlands Gravel Classic or a Barry-Roubaix, where you're only out there for 2, 3, 4 hours, and the race is going to be won or lost in a high-powered effort, you're going to want a higher VLA max. You want your body to be able to use the glycogen stores as easy as possible to make those race-winning efforts. And where the training side of it becomes important is because there is a balance. There is no right or wrong number for every race you do. It's always going to be different for every race. And now, too, with how competitive and how road race like these gravel races have become, you do kind of need a little bit of a higher VLA max to still be able to make those race-winning moves. Like a race like Unbound, where I was in the breakaway at the start of the race, and then eventually in the lead group, like I had to make those high-powered efforts to make those moves, right? So it's still important to be able to make those high-powered efforts, because at the end of the day, that's how races are won and lost, right? They're won and lost through high-powered attacks, high-powered moves. So you have to be able to make those moves. So that's where I say it's a balance, right? You have to kind of find what works best for you, what balance works best for you based on the type of rider you are, the way you race, and you go from there, right? So for me, that's why it's important for training, because every race I do, every training block I'm doing with my next goal race in mind, we're modifying my training to either increase or decrease my VLA max, to fit the needs of the race. So from a training standpoint, those two things are the most valuable metrics that I get out of lactate testing. There's a lot of information that comes out of those tests that you and your coach can get a lot of information out of, right? And to me, that's what it's the most beneficial for, is training. It's not performance metrics that you should go brag about to your friends. The metrics that you should go brag about are your race results. Your race results, at the end of the day, are what matter the most from a performance standpoint. Performance is the greatest indicator of performance itself, right? That's all that matters if you're a racer, right? If you're just someone who loves training, loves to see improvement, that's a different story. But that's not really the target audience I'm trying to go at this segment, right? Like, I'm talking strictly to racers. Race results are what matter the most, right? That's what you should be basing your improvements off of. You should always try to be improving at races, right? Because there is so much more than just the power that you do. It's optimizing your equipment setup, optimizing your nutrition, optimizing race strategy. Those are all things that are extremely important in racing, and I would argue more important than power themselves, right? So, focus on that. Focus on how you can become a better racer, how you can do the least amount of watts, the least amount of power, the least amount of kilojoules to have the results that you want, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Is the race result. So in other videos, I'll kind of go over how I prepare for a race from a bike setup, nutrition standpoint, how I make the decisions I do in terms of bike setup, nutrition strategy. But yeah, for this, I just kind of wanted to go over why I think lactate testing is extremely important and extremely beneficial, but also why I do think some values are overrated. So I do hope some people found this beneficial. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Reach out to me. If you are interested in doing any testing, reach out to VQ Labs. I think Jeremy and Chandler do an incredible job. They're so helpful. They're in both the testing and also explaining how the testing can benefit you based on your goals and your needs. So definitely reach out to them. Thank you to them for having me and their continued support. So yeah, that's all I really have for today. Like I said, if you got any questions, drop them in the comments. Like and subscribe. Gonna keep hopefully doing videos like this. And yeah, once again, if you guys have any suggestions, anything you want to see from the channel, same thing, put them in the comments, let me know. So thanks, have a good one.